Hey everybody, it's Jaime Fleres here. This is the third week of our 5-week series called Cosmic Heart, your guide to astrology and relationships. So just a quick recap. In the first class, we talked about the moon and the south node and how they represent our past lives, what we came in good at, what we came in as sort of our default operating mode in this life, both in how we operate just in our own lives and also how we operate in relationship. And then a little bit about, just what we've done in the past, what we came in with strengths in. Okay, so that was the first class. The second class was last week, and we talked about our inner masculine and feminine archetypes. So getting a little bit more nuanced than just feminine and masculine, but what archetype did we come to embody as the man or woman that we are, and what is our inner, opposite gender, our inner feminine if you're a man, or our inner masculine if you're a woman. And this Venus Mars, which is what we were looking at when it comes to the feminine and masculine, also indicates what we generally tend to be just default attracted to in a partner, and how we can actually follow the path of sacred marriage, sacred union within. So today we're going to take it a step further. There is one thing I want to mention before we go on, which I haven't mentioned yet, and this is related to the first two classes. So I want to mention this, and then we'll move on to this third piece that we're going to talk about today. So one of the things I forgot to mention, or have yet to mention, is that when we're in partnership with somebody, what we say in shamanic astrology as a good rule of thumb is that we want to honor our partner for their moon attributes 1/3 of the time, and we want to honor them for their Mars if they're a man, or Venus if they're a woman, 2/3 of the time. So we want to, we want to majority of the time support the archetype, the expression of the archetype of the man or woman they came to be in this lifetime, or human. If man and woman don't resonate with you, the human they came to be in this lifetime, the archetype they came to embody as the person they are, most of the time, 2/3 of the time, and then 1/3 of the time we want to honor them for their moon. So still recognizing that they're coming in with this expertise in an archetype from the past. Okay, so that is said. So let's move on to this third week's content. I'm so excited to talk about this. It's another big piece. And again, this series is called, A Guide to Astrology and Relationships, but I really see, when we talk about relationships, I see relationship, like our primary relationship is with self and understanding self and being in relationship with self. And then from there, how do we move forward into partnership with one or more people, right? So today we're going to talk about the relationship axis. So this is 2 points on the chart. So the relationship axis consists of the ascendant and the descendant on the chart. So the ascendant is often called the rising as well. So I'll use ascendant and rising interchangeably here. Oftentimes in a chart, you'll see that as the AS. And if you're looking at the chart as if it were a wheel, you would look at 9 o'clock. That's where the AS always is, right? The rising is always there. And what it is that's actually the eastern horizon, and it's the first sign on the horizon at the moment that you were born. So we have to have the time of your birth or pretty close to it in order to get the rising accurate. So if you know a day you were born, but you don't know what time you were born, it's going to be hard to find this axis. Because this axis changes every 2 hours, so what is coming up on the rising changes every 2 hours. So we do need to know at least within the hour of when you were born in order to get this really accurate. So just FYI. So if you trace a line from the AS, or the rising, all the way across the wheel, straight across to about 3 o'clock, you would find the DS, or the descendant, and that is the opposite. So that's what creates the axis for relationships. So we're going to talk about this relationship axis today, but I first want to talk about the rising just briefly. So the rising represents, so the sign that's on the horizon, that archetype there, represents the path we came to walk. So as I talked about before, in kind of pop astrology, we see the sun as like, oh, the sun sign is who you are, right? Well, the sun stays in a sign for about a month, so it's not very specific. The sun, the moon sign changes every 2.5 days. So that gets a little bit more specific to the time that we were born. And again, we've talked about what the moon represents. And then the rising, right? The rising changes every 2 hours. So it gets a little bit more specific to us and the time that we were born, the moment we chose to come into this onto this planet, it just gets more specific, right? So we look at that in shamanic astrology as the path we came to walk in this lifetime. So last week we talked about Mars and Venus, the woman or man we came to be on the path. And then this is the actual path itself. So this is the mystery school we signed up to learn most about. It's the archetype that is most primarily connected to our personal identity and is a primary driver of our purpose in this lifetime. So our rising can give us an indication of our current intended life path, as well as what our partner, when we look at their rising, what their intentions, their life path choice was for this lifetime, or is, right? Their intention for this lifetime on a soul level of what they came to really walk in this lifetime. Okay, so we have the AS. This is our life path. The AS is always in the first house. The first house is the sign of self. When we go to the opposite side, the DS is always in the 7th house, and that is the house of other. So we have self and other. We have this axis that creates, we have this pole, this dance between self and other. So this is what creates the relationship axis. So this axis tells us why our soul has decided what we want to do in relationship in the first place. What's the whole point of relationship for us in this lifetime? What did we come? What is the greater purpose for us in experiencing relationship in this lifetime? Okay, so society generally tells us that there's really only 1 or 2 ways that are the right ways to do relationship in whatever, period, right? There's 2 ways to do relationship, right? We would say in shamanic astrology that there are 6 ways. So the first way that's most socially acceptable is sort of the Libra Aries path, which is you find your soulmate and you pair bond for life and monogamy, and that's it. That's the most revered form of relationship. That's the most legitimate form of relationship, right? Is sort of this Aries Libra dynamic. And we'll talk more about each of the axes in just a minute. The other one that's also most acceptable, I've got kittens coming in hot. I have 2 kittens on my lap right now. That's happening. Okay, but we're going to carry on. And there might be some kitten situations. All right. So the other one that's socially acceptable is the Cancer Capricorn axis, which is the mother-father archetype. So we do relationship. This is more traditional, right? We do relationship. We enter into relationship. The whole point is so that we can embody the archetype of the mother and the father and raise a family, right? So those are the 2 that are most socially acceptable, but we actually have 6 according to shamanic astrology. I'm going to see if I can put this little sugar on the floor. Okay. All right. So we see that there are 6 ways of doing relationship, right? So what I'd love for you to do to play along here is I'll go through each of the axes and talk a little bit about them, describe them a little bit. But before I do, I want to just share that these are not rigid templates, that these are rough maps. They don't actually show the terrain. They just speak to the general. My cats are aggressively affectionate, just so y'all know. So that might happen. Continue to put her down. Okay. So, it depends, there's some variance. So it depends on what's on the rising and what's on the ascendant and what's on the descendant. For example, someone with an Aries rising is going to experience that axis of Aries Libra differently than the Libra Aries axis, right? If you had Libra rising and Aries on the other side, okay? So same for the rest of them. It depends on which side each of the signs are on, okay? So that's one piece. And then the other piece too is that we don't look at any of these things in isolation. We always look at them as a whole, which is why it's helpful to have somebody who can see all the pieces and how they work together. Side note, I offer shamanic astrology readings. In case you're interested, you can find me at sacredhearthealingarts.com. But back to our regularly scheduled program here. So we want to look at the whole of the chart. We want to look at the moon, and we want to look at the Venus and the Mars and all of these things, right? We also want to consider how this person, the culture that they live in, their personality and how they express their axis, right? Okay, so those are a few caveats. So let's go through each one. I want to just describe a little bit for each of these axes here. Oh my gosh, she keeps coming back. Okay. You're catching it real here. It's just like me and the cats right now. Okay. All right, so Aries Libra path, right? So this is one of the 6 axes. And I talked a little bit about this one, right? So Aries, I'm going to give like for each one of these, I'm going to give like a super high level label for each of the signs, which is a little dangerous because they're more complex than this, but I'm just going to do that for the sake of just like high level. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so Aries is kind of like the rugged individualist, right? Like really centered on self, not self-centered, but centered on self. The Libra is connector. It's all about partnership. It's all about the other. So we have this axis between them. So whether you are more Aries, if you're Aries rising or if you're Libra rising, this dynamic, this axis is chiefly concerned with the dynamic interplay between self and other. So for this relationship axis, relationship is the path of growth and soul evolution, right? For all of us, relationships are a source of growth and evolution, right? And expansion. But particularly for this Libra Aries, like that's their focus. Like the mantra is like, if you want to evolve, if you want to awaken, if you want to like any of that, like relationship is your path, like that is the way. Like if you're off the path, get back on the path, like go enter into a relationship and you'll continue on in your soul journey. It's a very process oriented style of relating. So this Aries Libra path is about discovering how to bond, how to build non-hierarchical, equal partnerships with one another, conscious partnerships, right? So in this style, like fighting is as good as relationship bliss. Like it's all good. It's just about learning and growing through relationship. So sometimes this path this is what we sort of associate with like fairy tale love or Disney love or like the happily ever after ideal of love. This idea that like we're going to go find our other half or we're going to find that perfect person to complete us. While this isn't necessarily the goal for Aries Libra, they do continually refine and deepen their understanding and experience of relationship, and in so doing, discover more and understand more about themselves and the world. So relationship is the path, right? So there is a sort of fulfillment, even though it may not be happily ever after fairy tale style, there is a deep fulfillment that this axis experiences when they're finding and engaging with the sacred other in partnership. Okay, so that's Aries Libra. Next up is Taurus Scorpio. So again, I told you I was going to give you like really quick labels for each of these. Taurus, if I could use one word, I would say sensuality. And Scorpio, so sorry. And Scorpio is sexuality. Okay, so this axis is about sharing, building, and exploring life force energy together. So those on this path need passion, they need intensity, they need to feel like their batteries are being charged. Their like life force batteries are being charged in relationship. They need to feel like their life force is being amplified. So if there is no passion, if there is no intensity, it's not really going to align for this Taurus Scorpio axis, right? So they need to feel connected to each other. There's a deep like merging that often happens in this axis. They need to feel connected to their own emotions, their bodies, their pleasure, the erotic. Like they need to be connected to that. This is also what we would associate with like the tantric path, this axis. Okay, so next we have a kitten trying to kiss my face. Seriously, I'm showing you. She's aggressively affectionate. Okay. All right, I'm sorry. All right, here we go. Okay, Gemini Sagittarius is the next axis. So whether you have Sagittarius rising or Gemini rising, right? So Gemini and Sagittarius are both very freedom-loving archetypes. Like they're the bachelors, bachelorettes, like, and the wandering traveler, gypsy troubadours of the zodiac. Okay, so this is not a traditional partnership. Like this is not a Cancer, Capricorn, mother, father, homemaker kind of style of relationship. This is a non-traditional partnership. So both of these, if you have either of these on your rising or you have this axis, often these people require space to breathe, to really be honored for their need to have space to roam, and to have space to take individual command of their own lives. So they need to feel their individuality. This is the path of the quest mate or the path mate. So Gemini is like the explorer. It's created to associated and connected with life force, energy, and the muse, creativity, communication, etc. And the Sagittarius archetype is like the philosopher, the wanderer, the explorer, the pioneer, right? So these two. So this is the path of the quest or the path mate, quest mate or path mate. So this is like, why would we want to do a relationship? Well, we'd want to have somebody to come along with us on our quest, our epic journey of life. And so this means that the purpose is to travel down the path together. So it could be that you're connected by a spiritual practice, you share a spiritual practice, you share a mission in life, you both are up to questing in some way. It doesn't have to be the same path. Like you both don't have to be super into Tai Chi, for example, or Christianity or whatever it might be, but you both have to honor each other for your unique paths, for your quests in life. And you have to deeply respect and encourage one another in your deep search for personal truth. Okay, so that is Gemini Sag. Gemini Sag can handle a lot more space in relationship than somebody like an Aries, Aries Libra axis, for example. Okay, the fourth path we have, the fourth axis here is the Cancer Capricorn. So this is the archetype, like I spoke of the mother and the father. So this relationship path is chiefly concerned with how to do family together. Now, not everybody who has Capricorn or Cancer rising is going to be in like a nuclear family. I think, as I spoke of before, we're in this turning of the ages, so we're actually rewriting a lot of these archetypes. But regardless, this is the axis where these two people in relationship are called to reinvent and update family in our society. So that can even be community. They're interested in how do we create safety and stability for our young ones, for our vulnerable? How do we create security and healthy bonds between people in community, in family? How do we create a version of family? How do we update our files on family collectively so that family serves future generations, right? So that's what this axis is up to. Like, why they want to do relationship? Well, they want to discover that. They want to explore that together. So children may or may not be present. It might not look like a nuclear family, but ultimately, like, that's what this axis is up to and curious about. Okay, the fifth one is the Leo Aquarius path, right? Leo is this like bright, they're both like these very independent kind of individual, unique sort of archetypes, right? They both can be quite independent, and so they may not even feel like they need a relationship. So why would they enter one in the first place? Well, the answer for a Leo Aquarius axis person would be, well, it would just be fun. Wouldn't it just be fun to amplify each other's sovereignty and independence? Like the purpose of this path would be to just amplify one another's independence, right? So the purpose of healthy relationship in this axis is to be with somebody who promotes, supports, and empowers you. Not to say that those aren't good qualities for all relationships, right? But this is like more fundamental, like deep purpose, right, for relationships. So it's about honoring your own independence and the independence of your partner. So again, there's a lot of space and individuality that's revered in this kind of partnership. This path wants to dismantle old couple consciousness. Like, it doesn't want to do the way, it wants to reinvent and do a different style of relationship than has been done before, than the traditional, okay? And then the last archetype is the Virgo Pisces archetype, right? Or the axis, right? So this is if you have Pisces or Virgo in your rising. So Virgo is, again, I'm giving high level, Virgo is like the sacred space holding priest or priestess, the one who holds sacred space, the one who recognizes patterns, etc. Pisces is the empathic and compassionate giver, right? So this is the axis of the helpmate. So why would I want to be in a relationship? Well, I want a partner who can help me, who we can help each other. We can support each other on our missions, on our paths, in our sacred work, in our sacred service. And that sacred work, sacred service doesn't necessarily have to be your job, but it has to be what you came here to do. So it's your mission. That could be super subtle too. Okay, so the purpose is to help one another. So if you're in a relationship and you have this axis and the relationship is detrimental to your own sacred path, you will not thrive. It's fundamental that you be supported on your sacred path and your sacred work in partnership. So we need to find somebody often who is with this axis who's equally devoted to their personal sacred work. They don't have to do the same work, but they do have to possess a similar stance to the value of their sacred service in the world. And they may be up to a similar soul purpose in life. Okay, so the last thing I want to say, I know we're getting a good old solid 20 minutes here with many kitten interruptions. That you don't necessarily have to find somebody who has the same axis as you, right? So you don't have to go, okay, like I'm a Sagittarius rising. That means the only way I can do relationship and be in alignment with my partner is if I also find somebody who's either Sag or Gemini rising, right? And they need to have the same axis. That's not true. But it's helpful to know what the axis is that's operating in you on the soul level and in your partner on the soul level so that you can honor them. So for example, if I'm in a relationship with somebody who has a Scorpio rising or even a Taurus rising, I know that their life force energy needs to be fed in our relationship. That if it's not, that the relationship is not actually serving their soul purpose, their soul intention for this lifetime. I know that if I'm in a relationship with a Pisces or Virgo rising, that their sacred work, that the sacred service aspect is going to be really important. If I'm in a relationship with somebody who's got a Sagittarius or Gemini rising or that axis, I know that they need some space, that they need to roam, they need to wander, they need to, not necessarily away from the relationship, but that there has to be some aspect of freedom to explore. Right? And I know that if I'm in a relationship with a Leo Aquarius, that like old relationship dynamics are not going to fly. It's about just having fun and about amplifying one another's sovereignty. So again, we have all of these archetypes inside of us. So there's overlap here. So it's not to say like, oh, if you have this axis, that's the only thing of this whole shebang that I just went through that applies to you. I mean, all of this applies to us to some degree, but we sort of have this centrality in this axis that we can look at that is going to come into play in some way when it comes to our relationships, when it comes to our life path. So this relationship axis can be a good piece of information to know about yourself and the people that you're involved with. Again, all of this is for the benefit of yourself, for your own self-wisdom, your own self-compassion, your own self-awareness, your own consciousness. And then also, how can you show up in relationship in a way that truly serves the soul of the other person? So that's what we're all up to. That's the whole point of this whole thing. So I hope that helped. I'm curious how it all landed for you and what you're thinking about and what you maybe have discovered in the process of listening to this third class in our series. Again, I'll just remind you that there are other videos in this series that you can check out here. If you're on Facebook, they're down below, and if you're in YouTube, they're on the playlist. And that they walk you through how to find your chart, how to read your chart, all that stuff. And I think that's it. So we have 2 more classes left. I'll announce those as we go, but I'd love to hear, how things landed for you in this class. So thanks so much for joining me. I'll talk to you next week. All right, bye.